In Western societies, children are usually taught to consider birthdays and holidays from a very selfish perspective. Especially during birthdays, they are honored and taught to expect gifts and congratulations just for the fact that they are completing one more year of life. But the questions now are, what did they do to accomplish this feat in life, just remaining alive for one more year? Did it require from them any special gifts or performances to stay alive? Or were they just sustained and cared for by grace, by a kind God? Should they be taught to look to themselves with a selfish mind instead of turning their eyes to God in gratitude? Ellen White says that parents have educated their children in selfish habits. They have taught them to regard their birthdays and holidays as occasions when they expect to receive gifts and to follow the habits and customs of the world. If this happens, there is a risk of developing selfishness and idolatry to their spiritual detriment. These occasions, says Ellen White, are turned into occasions for self-pleasing, for the gratification and glorification of the children, removing from them the vision of God and His caring protection and provision. It is not wrong at all to celebrate a child's birthday. It should always be celebrated. But there should be a special purpose for that celebration, namely, according to Ellen White, to increase the knowledge of God and to awaken thankfulness of heart for His mercy and love in preserving their lives for another year. But usually what happens is that even though children have been kept by the power of God through every moment of their life, parents do not teach their children to think of this and to express thanksgiving for His mercy toward them. In the first part of this text, Ellen White prepares us to imagine what will happen if children will be properly instructed and encouraged to recognize God's love during their birthday celebrations. She says, what praise and thanksgiving would flow from their lips to God. Then she adds that if children will be taught to recognize God's love during their birthdays, there will be a revenue of small gifts that will be brought from the hands of the little ones to be put into His treasury as thank offerings. And then she adds something very important. She states that in this case, pay attention on that, God will be remembered instead of forgotten by the children, of course. Pay attention to this statement. Are you wondering how could we keep your youth not only in the church, but more importantly, in God's ways? While many young people are turning their backs to God, Ellen White says that if parents will teach them to recognize God's love during their birthdays, to see Him, God, as the provider and sustainer of life by bringing to Him their offerings, God will be remembered by the youth instead of forgotten. Remember that according to Jesus, where their treasures are, there their hearts will be also. Matthew 6:21. Therefore, why not use celebrations like birthdays to bring their minds captive to the mind of Christ? When I was a baby about to die, God miraculously saved me after my father and mother dedicated me to serve the Lord for my whole life. In the following video, you will see what my mother did to help me to remember for my whole life how graciously was my life spared by God.
Dear Lord, I know you are the owner of the universe, totally able to do anything. If this child will later enlarge Satan's lines, please allow him to rest. But if he will serve you, please perform a miracle. I now give up my desire to get money to become rich. I rededicate myself to serve you my whole life, doing whatever you want me to do, and going wherever you send me. I will also dedicate this child to you, and will prepare all my other children to serve you. This prayer came from a desperate father, while his baby son, who was near death, was having surgery. Not too long before that, Oswaldino, who was studying at the Adventist Seminary in Sao Paulo, Brazil to become a pastor, almost left God's call due to his desire for wealth. He was considering a friend's proposal to partner with him in purchasing a gas station when his son Marcos became very sick. During that meaningful prayer in one of the hospital's restrooms, Oswaldino put his entire life in God's hands. No one can say that Marcos's healing wasn't a miracle, and after that experience, he and his siblings heard the following words from their mom every year. Here is your birthday offering, dear. Please tell your Sabbath school teacher that it was your birthday, and don't forget to give that offering as you do every year. The birthday offering became a meaningful experience of gratitude and rededication to God for this family, which raised 2 pastors and a pastor's wife.
My wife and I tried to apply this same principle in our family, teaching our 2 daughters, Luana and Alana, to bring their birthday offerings, which were special offerings, given once a year on the Sabbaths after or just before their birthdays. In this picture, taken some years ago, you may see them with their husbands while visiting us. Inspired by God, Ellen White suggests that instead of bestowing gifts and offerings in such abundance on human objects, reverence, honor, and gratitude should be rendered to God, and gifts and offerings should be caused to flow in the divine channel. Would not the Lord be pleased with such a remembrance of Him? She also suggests that we must set our children's thoughts running in a new, unselfish channel by inciting them to present offerings to God for the gift of His only begotten Son. Not only on birthdays should parents and children remember the mercies of the Lord in a special way, says Ellen White, but Christmas and New Year's should also be seasons when every household should remember their Creator and Redeemer. This kind of teaching may contribute to providing a lasting influence on the lives of our children, and in the way they will see God and in their choices to serve Him. One of my daughters, Luana, after leaving home and studying in Ayas in the Philippines, came back to our country, and after marrying Fernando, a missionary, decided to serve with him as volunteers in the Brazilian Amazon. You may see here their first home in the picture, and our dog Tofu, whom they adopted and took with them after we came to the US. My other daughter, Alana, and her husband Gabriel suffered a serious accident some years ago. The car was completely lost, and no one could believe that they came out of it unharmed. On the following weekend, they called me asking about how to give a thanksgiving offering for the Lord's great deliverance. On that same Sabbath, my wife and I also gave the Lord a special offering, thanking Him for His protection. I am not trying to say that our family is perfect, which will not be true. The point here is that we need to do the most we can to teach our children to remember God not only on their birthdays, but in all events of life. By doing so, while praying for them, the chances are higher that their minds will run in a new, unselfish channel, as said Ellen White. As we read before, when we do it, we encourage them to present offerings to God for the gift of His only begotten Son. In this next video, you will watch what happened to Alana and Gabriel, her husband. Pay special attention to their immediate response after a very threatening circumstance.
We couldn't find an airline ticket to Brasilia for a reasonable price, so we opted for a night coach bus to get there. Everything seemed okay, we even fell asleep, but out of nowhere, we heard people screaming. We didn't know what was going on.
Yes, we noticed the bus is going really fast. I looked out the window. We're in a remote area. We were pretty scared.
So we heard gunshots, broken glass spread all around us. It was crazy. I felt something really hot in my hand, so I immediately closed it. I had a bullet in my hand.
2 rows ahead of us, we saw the driver bending over while he kept driving, trying to escape the bullets aimed at him from the car in front of us.
He had to make a tough decision. Stop the bus and hope the robbers wouldn't do anything bad, or try to run away from the shooting with the risk of dying in an accident.
Finally, we reached a police station on the road, and the robbers gave up. Miraculously, all the passengers were safe, except for one person who was shot in the arm. Nothing serious, though.
As we got to our final destination, we thought about how we could show our gratitude to God in response to His protection. So we called my dad, who's a pastor, and asked him how thank offerings work.
He told us that the thank offering should be additional to our promise, regular percentage-based offering, and that we should mark thank offering on our electronic or regular envelope.
And so we did. While we placed the envelope in the basket, we prayed and thanked God for His immense mercy.
You may see here some additional pictures from this story. How the bullets hit the bus. One of them, still hot, softly landed in my daughter's hand. I was so thankful to see that their minds were still running in this channel, recognizing God's precious gift of life through His only begotten Son. Now, how to worship God as a family during birthday celebrations? I would suggest you impress the child with the idea of spiritual accountability. This is a special day, and they should spend part of it assessing their spiritual growth at the end of one more year of life, and also making plans for their spiritual growth in the new year of life that is just beginning. Why not invite a church elder to do a very short biblical devotional and pray for the birthday celebrant during the party? Another suggestion is to encourage them to express their gratitude to God by planning for a special offering in addition to their promise to be brought to the church in the following Sabbath. And finally, the family or the individual may silently pray in the church, thanking God for the gift of life while delivering the special offering. Now, I would like to provide suggestions about what a church may do to lead people's minds to run in that new, unselfish channel. Once in a month, a special time may be set apart during regular service on Sabbath to worship God with those who are celebrating their birthdays that month. The church leader calls the celebrants to the front of the church to pray with them, thanking God for the gift of life. The celebrants may be previously encouraged to bring an offering of thanksgiving to God for their birthday. Those who are willing may reverently place their offering envelope on the offering plate. But what about Christmas or New Year? Should Christians celebrate them? Have you ever thought about the implications of how is the world celebrating Christmas? The custom of giving gifts may differ from place to place, but people usually bring a gift to the birthday person, right? When they go to a birthday party. But for a reason that only the great controversy theme can explain, this custom of honoring the birthday person has been largely forgotten during Christmas. Most of those who celebrate Christmas forgot who is the birthday person that should be honored during Christmas. By just giving gifts to each other during that season, most people remain oblivious to the true birthday celebrant. On top of it, even some Christians fill their houses with representations of a mythological being clothed in red, you know very well what I'm saying, which was certainly created to replace or at least to obliterate Christ, the true birthday celebrant. Therefore, how not to celebrate Christmas? Ellen White responds that by the world, the holidays are spent in frivolity and extravagance, gluttony, and display. Thousands of dollars will be worse than thrown away upon the coming Christmas and New Year's in needless indulgences. But it is our privilege to depart from the customs and practices of this degenerate age, and instead of expending means merely for the gratification of the appetite or for needless ornaments or articles of clothing, we may make the coming holidays an occasion in which to honor and glorify God. She keeps saying that Christ should be the supreme object, but as Christmas has been observed, the glory is turned from him to mortal man, whose sinful, defective character made it necessary for him to come to our world. Some paragraphs ahead, she says that parents should keep these things before their children and instruct them line upon line, precept upon precept, in their obligation to God, not their obligation to each other, to honor and glorify one another by gifts and offerings. So, how to worship as a family during Christmas and New Year? You may plan to bring a special present to the birthday person if there will be a Christmas celebration in your church. And yes, Ellen White says that we may celebrate Christmas even in our churches, provided we worship and we thank the true birthday person and not follow worldly patterns of intemperance. May we have Christmas trees in our churches? Well, God's messenger says that God will be well pleased if on Christmas each church would have a Christmas tree on which shall be hung offerings, great and small, for these houses of worship. Just a note here that she was mentioning houses of worship due to a current building project. And then she adds that letters of inquiry have come to us asking, shall we have a Christmas tree? Will it not be like the world? We answer, she says, you can make it like the world if you have a disposition to do so, or you can make it as unlike the world as possible. There is no particular sin in selecting a fragrant evergreen and placing it in our churches, but the sin lies in the motive which prompts to action and the use which is made of the gifts placed upon the tree. She then keeps saying that the tree may be as tall and its branches as wide as shall best suit the occasion, but let its boughs be laden with the golden and silver fruit of your beneficence, and present these to Him as your Christmas gift, let your donations be sanctified by prayer. So if your church will not have a service like that on Christmas, you may gather your family for a meaningful family worship on Christmas, reminding the marvelous gift of Christ who came as a baby to die in our place. You may distribute Bible readings about Christ's birth and sing a lot of hymns about Christ, God's decision to send Him as a baby, and His decision to offer Himself in our place, and so on. Those moments will never be forgotten by your children. It's important to remind ourselves that the focus must be on worshiping Him, not on the gifts. You may plan as a family to benefit or to invite another family or person, maybe someone in need, to come to your place. God's servant endorses that attitude. She says, Christmas and New Year celebrations can and should be held in behalf of those who are helpless. God is glorified when we give to help those who have large families to support. During the family worship, invite the participants to express their gratitude for the gift of Jesus and or for the ending year. Then pray during the family worship, thanking God while setting apart an offering to be brought to God's house. But is it a sin to bestow a gift upon our loved ones during these occasions? God's servant answers by saying that it is pleasant to receive a gift, however small, from those we love. It is an assurance that we are not forgotten and seems to bind us to them a little closer. She says that it is right to bestow upon one another tokens of love and remembrance if we do not in this forget God, our best friend. We should make our gifts such as will prove a real benefit to the receiver. And she says, I would recommend such books as will be an aid in understanding the Word of God or that will increase our love for its precepts. Provide something to be read during these long winter evenings. Of course, she was meaning the Northern Hemisphere, where it is winter during Christmas. God is inviting you to set your children's thoughts running in a new, unselfish channel. By encouraging them to present offerings to God, you may influence them to develop important traits of character, motivating them to make decisions for eternal life. God bless you and your children.